Okay, next we have Penn State. Their over-under set at 8.5 wins. Bit of a disappointing year last year, obviously. Lost their first, was it 4 or 5 games?
I believe it was five.
Yeah, because they went 4-5. They lost their first five, then they won their last four.
Yep.
James Franklin has had a pretty good career there, I would say, as their head coach. He fired their offense coordinator Kirk Shiraka after just last season. Then he hired Mike Yursich, who is known as a pretty good offensive coordinator. They have Sean Clifford back yet again. It seems like he's been their quarterback for forever, and he feels like just another replacement level quarterback. It's kind of unbelievable that Penn State has not found someone better than him by now to take over. He's not terrible, but I also don't think he's a difference maker quarterback. Noah Kane didn't. Their running back did miss most of last year with an injury. They have him back. I think he's pretty good. Jahan Dotson is one of the best receivers in the conference. So there's things to work with there, and we're just talking about the offense so far. You can talk about the defense if you want. What are your initial thoughts on Penn State? Can they come back from a 4-5 season where they really were underneath expectations?
I think they will. I really do believe they will. Clifford, the veteran, he's been there a long time. He wasn't what we thought he was going to be, and that's why they were overvalued last season. There, but he could be though. I think he still can get there. And I think more than anything, I think Franklin himself will have a bounce back year. The actual coach himself. There's two teams really that I see that really have strong bounce back years. I think Penn State's one of them. For me, another one would be Minnesota with PJ Fleck. And I think more than anything is because I believe in the coach. Franklin has won everywhere he's been, with the exception of a bad year. I mean, and there are some Penn State fans that will disagree with you, and they would actually like to have had him out. Would have liked to lost a few more games last year and not be dealing with this anymore. But the recruiting is there for Penn State. They're recruiting at a pretty high level, considering all the things that they've gone through in the past 10 years. They still get quality talent. Micah Parsons, they missed Micah Parsons a lot last year. He didn't play at all. He dropped out, as you know, just before the season started. But you don't replace a top 5 pass rusher like that. Like, he was going to be their stud there on defense, and just to be missing him, they were kind of left almost with no backup plan. So I think they have some time there. They keep bringing in quality recruiting classes. I really like Franklin, what he brings. I like Clifford. I think between them all, I think they can bounce back. I'm going to go with the over. They have four. For me, it's really 4 really hard games. Well, 5. You have the Wisconsin game, the Auburn game, Iowa, Ohio State, and Michigan. I think they'll beat Michigan, and I really think they'll beat Wisconsin too. So I have their losses as to Auburn, Iowa, and Ohio State, teams that I think are just maybe more talented than they are still. So I do have them winning 9 games and going 9-3. They're not going to beat Ohio State. That game's not going to be even. I don't even really think that close. We both think Ohio State's considerably more talented than anyone else. 9-3, and that's a good year. That's a good year. That's a good bounce back year, considering that what happened last year and the games that you lost last year. That's a good year. I think they had some momentum kind of coming into this year to build off of. I think that'll be big.
Yeah, it does feel so. They beat Ohio State in 2016, I believe. Then they had consecutive 1-point losses to Ohio State after that. It felt like they were right on the doorstep. I don't really feel that anymore. I don't think they're right next to Ohio State, and I'm not sure. It might be more to do with Ohio State than Penn State, just because Ohio State has upped their level of recruiting and has separated from them. So Penn State, when we say they have the recruiting, we're not talking about it in comparison to Ohio State, but I would say more in comparison to the rest of the conference. It does feel like they are pretty clearly the second most talented team in the conference. I do like them this year. I am also with you. I'm with you on the over. I do think they can easily get to 9 wins. Easily is maybe not the right word to use there, but I am definitely on the over. Feel pretty good about it. Sean Clifford, again, decent player. I don't love him, and to me he's a limiting factor if you want to talk about them competing with Ohio State. However, I think he is good enough for them to beat anyone else in their schedule. I'm not exactly sure which of their games are wins and which ones are losses. But to me, 9-3 or 10-2 feels about right for Penn State. I am interested to see what the future looks like. It does feel like James Franklin is kind of at the place where, does he have that second resurgence in his career, or is this going to be the start of sliding into an 8-4, 9-3 type of program, which I know is not what they're looking for in Penn State. However, as of right now, they do have the number one recruiting class in the country for 2022. They'll probably settle in around 8 to 10, just based on their average recruit ranking. But a good start for sure. And if you can recruit in the top 10 every year, you might not win a national title, but you are going to knock on the door a few times.
Absolutely. And their class for next year, it looks incredible. And I think more than anything, it's the momentum I think that gives, and their wins that they popped off at the end of last year, I think helped. I think that helped with that. We saw them, they just recently picked up another 4-star, I believe it was 2 days ago. And you really see that the kids know first. That's kind of the saying in the industries, that the kids know first how the feel is at the university and what the confidence level is and what's going on in practice. The kids, the recruits, know this first because they're there. They have to choose, and they're going to Penn State, which means they feel a lot of faith in that Franklin will still be there, and that he does have the talent there to turn this around. And yeah, that last year make last year just a fluke, because it was a fluky year in a lot of ways for a lot of people, and it felt with maybe Penn State more than anyone else that was a fluke.
Yeah, I don't think this is the year for them to compete for the Big Ten, but I do think they're on the right trajectory. After last year, I do think it's going uphill, and I think it's going to continue that way. If you look at their recruiting class, Drew Allard is a good quarterback out of Ohio, who I really think is going to be. He's very talented. I think he's going to fulfill that promise. And they're bringing in Nicholas Singleton next year, maybe the top running back in the country. Anyway, that has nothing to do with this year. Those guys are still in high school. But I do think it is obvious that there is a bright future there at Penn State. So I do think James Franklin, I do not expect him to be on the hot seat a year from now or after this season. So I think it's going to be a good season.